Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to make a video that's going to save you a lot of time and not waste hours of your precious lives reading some of the worst books that I've been recommended by TikTok or BookTok, in my humble opinion. Now obviously bear in mind that reading is extremely subjective, and I'm not saying don't read books by these authors, these books are horrific or anything like that. I'm just saying that actually I am saying that they're not very good. I'm saying it in more of a way where it's just like, there are basics that I feel like I need from a book to deem it a good book, right? There were too many boxes that these books just did not tick. I will highlight the issues that I have with these books because some of these recommendations I just don't understand. I don't understand why they have got so much traction. No hate to any of the authors, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't read anything by this author at all. It's just these specific books did not live up to the hype that they get, in my opinion. So firstly, I just want to say, okay, I think this is one of the most overhyped books I have ever read in my life. First of all, I don't dislike Reverse Grumpy Sunshine, but in this book, Anastasia's just straight up rude. It's not even like she's just grumpy, she's just actually rude for no reason. And I think if you're going to make your character dislike, you know, if there's going to be some tension or some issues between the two main characters, at least let there be a valid reason as to why that is. She was even rude to him while she was staying in his place because her, I think if I remember correctly, her flatmate or housemate that she was living with, she had an issue with him. So Nathan would let her live with him and she would still be rude to him, but then in turn be nice to every single one of his friends whilst wandering around their house in just literally an oversized t-shirt in front of all of his friends, but then actively be rude to Nathan. For what? Like, what did Nathan actually do to her in this book to justify the way she treated him? Nothing. So that's my first problem. My second problem is if you're going to have a lot of side characters, which this book has so many I can't even count, you need to pay them some attention. Sarah J Maas does it perfectly in Throne of Glass. There are so many characters in that series, but do any of them feel like they're lacking? No. Do any of them feel like we don't know them properly? We don't know where they've come from, don't know their story? No. We know everything about those characters because they're just as important to the main storyline. And whilst I understand that the characters are going to go on to get their own books, that's fine, but I'm reading this book and I don't know about any of these other characters. I just keep seeing names get thrown in. Who are you? Who are you? Also, if you're going to write spice, fine. But the spice in this was just so cringe, I couldn't even bring myself... It was just so cringe, I couldn't read it. And a lot of people say Nathan, the things that he says, the spice in this book. Whilst I will admit that there are a lot of spicy chapters, personal preference, the spice that was in it, really super cringe to read. Some of the things that he would say genuinely made me cringe. I think on my Goodreads review, when I reviewed this when I read it over a year ago, I actually included some of the dialogue that was in there. If I can find the review, I'll post a snippet of it because no. So there was just too much about this book that I didn't like. I didn't like the FMC. I didn't like the side characters because I didn't know them. Nathan was okay, to be fair, and he was the only reason I think I was able to finish the book. And even though it's spicy, it was really cringy. And it read very, very young. Also, another thing I just want to mention, there was way too much going on, but no story. And then the actual story, oh my god, I'm remembering now. The actual story was rushed and over and done with within like 2 chapters right at the very end of the book. The whole first 70% was just a whole lot of nothing, of just Anastasia being rude. Okay, next up is Priest by Sarah Simone. Now, the issue that I have with this book is the spice, I'm going to be honest, is insane. It's really good. If you just want to read spicy scenes with absolutely no plot whatsoever, then fine. What lets this book down is the characters that are written in this are so bland and so boring, and I think Sarah Simone just relies on the forbidden aspect of the relationship because obviously he is a priest. Funnily enough, her name is Poppy. She comes in one day, they bump into each other, and then out of nowhere, the insta-lust is crazy, and this priest is like, oh my god, I think I want to sleep with her. And I'm like, that just wouldn't you don't even know a single thing about her, and then when we get to know her, she's not even that exciting. The characters just lacked so much depth that even though it was so taboo and it was so forbidden, it just wasn't giving anything. Some of the spicy scenes in this are amazing, and she writes that well, she really does, but I also need some plot and character development with my story, of which we had neither. And I also think if a priest is going to go against everything he believes in, I need more of the conflict in the inner monologue. I need to know how much he's struggling with that decision. I need to know that he's thinking about that decision. I need to know that Poppy is stressing about the fact that he wants to make that decision for her. You know, I need this tension and I need this conflict in forbidden. I think with taboo romance, if there's no conflict over what's happening in the relationship, why is it even taboo in the first place? That's the whole point. It brings a whole other layer to it. Just didn't get that in this. And also, it's kind of boring, if I'm honest. It's kind of boring. Nice cover though. Nice cover. This book, Flawless, is blander than chicken without seasoning. Seriously, what is this? I think genuinely I don't love small town romance anyway. It's not my favourite genre. It's just a little bit too cutesy and fluffy for me. I need more. I don't necessarily need dark romance, but I need more conflict, more tension. That's just something that I look for in my books. So I am aware of that, and I did decide to then pick up a book that probably wasn't going to be my favourite ever. But like I say, for example, with Sarah J Maas's books, and I know I keep going back to it, but it's because I'm reading Throne of Glass at the moment, there's no spice in those books whatsoever. It is just purely driven by the characters and the plot. And the characters and the plot are so strong in those books that you don't need anything else because you're so invested in them. That's how you know the books are well written. Summer and Rhett were just so boring to me. You know, Rhett's this like trying to be a reformed cowboy, you know, he's got a bad boy image. I just think those tropes in general are cheesy. So if you're gonna use them, I need more from the story. And then also Summer just had nothing really about her. She was very, very average. I thought this was going to be quite tense because she was having to travel with him. It's also called an enemies to lovers. That term must be so loosely used because I honestly feel like this is more of a mild dislike in the first 30% to I really, really fancy you to oh look, we're together. So I wouldn't even call it an enemies to lovers. It does have the one bed trope in it, but again, that scene is just mild, you know, at best. I think with this needs to be marketed differently. It's not a spicy, small town, enemies to lovers romance. This is just purely a contemporary romance of two people that didn't like each other at the beginning and then they like each other by the end, if I'm honest. Which is set in a small town with cowboys, which I don't care about cowboys. It needs some seasoning, you know? I need to compose myself on this one because actually this makes me the angriest of them all. Because I think those books have some redeeming qualities to them. Like, for example, Priest, the spice is really good. Broken Bonds by J. Bree is actually so bad, is poorly written. The writing is really bad. And I hate saying that about somebody else's work, but genuinely, it's not good. So this is a why choose a fantasy romance. So I was very, very excited to read this. There are 6 or 7 books, I think, in this series. This is the first one I have, the only one I have, and the only one I will ever have. For the reason that the writing was just so tragic. I just couldn't. It was frustrating, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the world building is poor. I cannot tell you what this world looks like that we're in. I can't picture it. I don't buy that if you keep reading you find out more, because I think when you're writing a fantasy book, the whole point of building the world is so that as you continue the series, you know exactly where you are, what's happening, what's gone on in the past there. You just know everything about this fantasy world that you're in. We can't picture it against real life because it's not set in real life. So it makes it really hard to get into the book when the world building's poor. Terrible world building. I didn't even know, is it dystopian or not? Are the people like us or not? What happened in the past to get to this point? What are bonded and unbonded? Where did they come from? Why is that a term? Why is it a thing? Why do you need to be bonded? What's the significance of being bonded? Because none of these questions get answered in the book. And so if I still don't understand what the hell is going on, why am I going to keep reading? The second thing, and obviously just some context there, she basically runs away from the guys that she's supposed to be bonded to. And the whole book is essentially her being brought back to the guys that she's supposed to be bonded with. But I don't know the relevance for that because I don't understand the relevance of bonding, what it is, why it's here, and why it's important. So that's why I don't think this book is very good. And secondly, the FMC says freaking all the time. So she'll be like, he's so freaking annoying. I'm so freaking hungry. It's so freaking cold in here. Oh my freaking God. All the time. Sometimes multiple times on one page. It was infuriating to read. and it read really immaturely. There was absolutely no spiciness whatsoever, and out of the bonded guys that we met, only one of them really piqued my interest, to be honest, which was, I think it's Knox Draven, but even he was just coming across as a bit of an arrogant idiot. Unfortunately, I just did not like this book, and the way that people rave about this on BookTok, I am baffled. This genuinely just comes down to poor writing and poor world building. How can there be any redeeming qualities of this series whatsoever? And I know it is really well loved, and I really don't understand why. Next up is Sweet Regret by Kay Bromberg. Now, full disclosure, this was actually a DNF for me. So this one and Broken Bonds I just spoke about, I actually did not finish those books. This is a second chance rockstar romance, and I could not even get 30% of the way through because poorly written characters. And I feel like when you give us a book that's this short, 320 pages, you need to write your characters well, because there's not a lot of pages in here to build up a huge story. So I need to care about my characters to want to follow the book and where it's going, and I just didn't. We had the typical, you know, troubled rock star trope. The thing that I found really unrealistic about this is, and, you know, if you haven't read this, then this is your spoiler warning. I think most people know this about the book, but like I say, if you want to go in blind, spoiler alert. She has a child that she had with him. I think I think the kid is like 7 years old, and she never told him about it, and then she ends up working with him, and in the 30% that I read, she'd been with him quite often and still had not told him that he is the father of a child. And then also I was realising that I actually didn't care if he was ever going to be told about the child. I didn't care if he was going to form a relationship with this kid. So the next book is Mafia, Mistress by Mila Finelli, which is exactly what it says it is. It's a mafia romance. It is kind of on the darker side, but I wouldn't really, you know, it's not the darkest of dark romances. It was, again, poorly written characters. I actually also could not finish this book because I had a lot of issues with it. So firstly, my first issue is Fausto, which is the MMC. He's supposed to be this really scary, intimidating mafia don. If you were going to write someone like that, then actually write him and make him behave like that. Actually write him that way. Make his dialogue match up to the character that he's supposed to be. Instead of telling me, oh, he went off and did this last night. It was a lot of telling and not showing. He went and paid this guy a visit. He went and did this. He went and did that. But actually when it came round to reading him, he doesn't come across that way at all. In fact, he wasn't intimidating to me in the slightest, and yet he's meant to like run the mafia. So that was frustrating. It's also an age gap romance. It's quite a large age gap in here, which to be honest, I don't really mind. But I think because of that, why was I not finding it spicy? I also found that Francesca, again with her, there was a lot of telling and not showing. So she would always say, I want to leave, I want to run away, I'm going to find a way out of here. Yet none of that was actually written into the story. It was just told, and I just think that's really lazy writing. Because of that, I was just getting really bored. The only reason that she was staying as far as I got up to was because she'd formed somewhat of a relationship with his son, who she was actually, I believe, supposed to be marrying, and then he's got his own secrets, which would be a spoiler, so I'm not going to mention that. But I am going to mention something about this book that did maybe decide to DNF it, which will be a spoiler, so this is your spoiler alert warning. There is the accidental pregnancy trope in this, and I hate it when authors use that as a reason for two characters to get together, because again, I feel like it's lazy writing. If you're going to create 300 pages of conflict as to why two characters aren't going to be together, and then throw in a baby for them to both just turn around and go, oh, we're having a baby now, we may as well be together, I think that's lazy writing, because you're not actually then trying to write a resolution to it, all the conflict that you've built. You're just throwing in a baby and being like, oh look, they're together, happy ever after. And I hate that. And also the spice was just cringing me so much. Really cringe, and it was really cheesy, and I wasn't the biggest fan of it. And I see a lot of reviews saying how the spice and everything and the tension, this is so good, and I so severely disagree. There's all the books that I have been recommended off BookTok that have been really, really hyped up that I actually just don't think are worth your time. You know, we all have very different reading tastes. That doesn't mean that just because I didn't like them, you won't like them. But you know, books are expensive and time is precious. So if you have been looking forward to reading a book and based off of this decided not to, you can thank me later. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.